All right. How's everybody doing? I had a great idea this morning when I woke up. I've spent so much time doing these long videos. Yesterday, I put out a 1 hour long video, and they take all day to do. So I'm going to start doing while I'm busy, while I'm working a lot of hours. I'm going to take 30 or 45 minutes in a day or every other day and do a Dixie short. One story, 5 to 10 minute long videos, just to keep content going and to continue to put videos out. We'll just call them Dixie Shorts. This will be Dixie Short number 1. Hope you guys like it. All right, here we go. The writer's name is Jeremy. It's a short story. And here's what he writes. I have a Sasquatch or Monkey Man story to share that was told to me by my grandmother. We live in a very rural part of southwest Pennsylvania. This area is still more forest than civilization. Back in the late 1930s and early 40s, when this happened, it was even more so. My grandmother was fairly young at the time, about 12 to 14 years old. Her parents, my great-grandparents, were farmers. They lived mainly off of what they produced on the farm and hunted off the land. Things haven't changed much. We're still geared towards living off the land in our family. At the time of the encounter, my great-grandparents had a few head of general-purpose cattle. They were used for dairy, and then once they got too old to produce milk, they were used for beef. It all started when these cattle began acting strange. At first, they just seemed nervous and jittery. They began bellowing a lot, and their tails were often tucked between their legs, and they were scared. Then they started kicking and butting. These were all clear signs that something was going on. They just didn't know what. Well, after a few days of this behavior, some of them all but quit producing milk. There was no doubt now that the cattle were spooked by something. Everyone thought a bear or a cougar was probably to blame. Finally, one night, the cattle wouldn't come to the barn for feeding or milking. This was very strange. Cattle don't just decide not to feed. Plus, going without being milked can be downright painful for a cow. My grandmother and her siblings were sent out to the partially wooded pasture to round up errant livestock and drive them back to the barn. And as they walked, they all knew to keep their eyes open for the predator they thought was scaring their cattle. If they spotted it and were able to drive it off, life could return to normal on the farm. The pasture they were headed to was a fair piece back in an old mountain holler with boulders laying all around. As they made their way out there, they were able to make out in the evening light a bear sitting on top of one of those boulders. As soon as they recognized it, they all shifted into scare-off mode. They clapped their hands and whooped and hollered and made all kinds of noise as they walked towards the bear. They had only gone a few yards in that direction, though, when the bear stood up. Now they all got a good look at it, and they knew it wasn't a bear at all. My grandmother described it as a giant monkey that was larger than anyone who was there, or for that matter, anyone she had ever seen before in her life. Flight or fight kicked in, and none of them chose to fight. They ran back to the barn as fast as they could where my great-grandfather was working. They were all crying and scared half to death. Fear and adrenaline made it difficult to tell what they just witnessed, but evidently they got it out. My great-grandfather didn't believe them, but he figured he'd better go see what was really out there. He took his gun with him just in case he could make a free meal out of a bear. By the time he got all the way out to that back pasture, the only thing left there was the terrified herd. He drove them back to the barn more convinced than ever that the kids did not see a giant monkey. However, once he got them into the barn, the cattle wouldn't go back outside for a week. My great-grandfather had to concede that something out there had terrified the cows, something that could scare them beyond the average bear. No one ever saw the monkey man again, but just to be safe, no one ever went out to that back pasture alone again either. There have been more Sasquatch sightings in this area than I can begin to tell you. A great many of them were recorded in the 1970s by our local paranormal expert, Stan Gordon. Between the number of sightings he recorded, my grandmother's stories, and the countless times I felt unwelcome in the forest around here, I'm inclined to believe that something does live in these woods. There are still more than enough forests and deep dark hollers for whatever is out there to have a place to live and hunt and survive for many years to come. Okay, wasn't that a good story? That was so well written, and it's a nostalgic story. The guy's remembering his grandparents and his aunts and uncles, and I thought it was great. You know, this is Easter Sunday. If you're one of these people, I'm going to talk about Easter Sunday for just about 2 minutes. But so if you're one of these people who this kind of talk about religion really offends you, just click away. You don't have to leave a nasty comment. You don't have to talk about what a fake document the scriptures are. We all know your feelings on that, so you just don't, and don't hold it against me that I do. You don't like the Bible. You don't like God. I like God. I like the Bible. So I don't hold it against you. Don't hold it against me. But it is Easter. It's the day 33 years after God steps off his throne and becomes a human. He becomes a man, and he has all the worries and trials that you have. Everything you go through, he went through. He was sick. Jesus always, the thing that always puts it in perspective to me is Jesus had upset stomachs. He had diarrhea. He had colds. He had sinus problems. He had whatever the COVID was at the time was going around. It comes in every generation. He was human, and he was on a one-way mission to the cross to die. And what he was paying for was enormous. It was an enormous payment he was about to make. But you can read about all that. But what I want to say is I run into a lot of people who say they're Christians, and they are always waiting on God's plan for their life. They always think there's going to be a plan laid out for their life. I just wanted to tell you that, you've been offered a huge amount of grace. And if you are a regenerate Christian, if you have been brought to life by God, then you know it. You don't have to wait on God's plan for your life. His plan for your life is for your life not to be yours anymore, for your money not to be yours anymore, and for your appearance not to be a worry to you. Your toys are not important anymore. That doesn't mean you can't have a boat. There's not an either or. It's just that those things don't become so important. Your treasure in your life is Jesus, and if that's your life, then you can breathe that out to others, and it'll show in your life. So here's my advice. If you want to know what God's plan is for your life, the next time you go to a restaurant and you have a $25 bill, leave a $100 tip for the waitress. Turn loose of some of that money and make someone stay, and get out of there before she or he picks up the tab and sees that $100 tip. Take a cart back at Walmart. If you're going to go to Walmart and go shopping, or Sam's, or any of these big box stores, grab a couple of carts and take them into the store. Pick a parking place away from the building and leave it for an older person. The next time you see a coworker you've been having trouble with, tell them, "Oh, what a nice dress you have on. You look great today," and then walk away. Breathe life into other people, and you can do that in so many ways. So many ways. It's one of the most fun things I do in my day. I try to think of things where I can be life to other people. And that is God's plan for my life. To be life, breathe life, speak life into other people. Don't be negative. Because then you look like the rest of the world. So that's God's plan for your life. If you're not a preacher or an evangelist or some super theologian or a Christian writer or something like that, a Francis Chan or a John Piper, God has a plan for your life, and there it is. You can do stuff every day to follow God's plan for your life. There's no rules to follow, and you don't have to do anything to earn what He's given you. It's yours free. So take it and do something with it. All right, that's probably the first and only time I'll ever talk about religion on this channel, but it is Easter Sunday. I wanted to wish you all a good Resurrection Day. It's a beautiful day here in Mississippi, and I'm going to enjoy it with my family. I'm going to breathe life into my family today. I'm going to have fun with my grandkids. I'm going to tell my granddaughters how pretty they are. And I'm going to tell my grandsons what studs they are. And I'm going to just have a good day. I'm going to tell my wife she looks beautiful. I'm going to breathe life into other people. So I hope you guys have a great Easter, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.